Hello and welcome to another Booktube channel. I'm Nick, and today I'll be reviewing the first book in the Dresden Files series, Stormfront by Jim Butcher. Starting off with a quick synopsis in case you are unfamiliar with this book or series, Harry Dresden is a private investigator in modern-day Chicago, and he's also a wizard. So his cases tend to cross the line from the ordinary to the supernatural. In Stormfront, Harry is hired by a woman to find her missing husband. At the same time, Harry is retained by the local police force, their Special Investigations Division, to assist in a grisly double homicide case that doesn't look like it was committed with any ordinary weapons. If you can't tell from that synopsis, Stormfront is a detective fantasy novel. It's a subgenre that I don't know existed prior to the Dresden Files, but correct me if I'm wrong about that. I'm not a detective scholar or a fantasy scholar. One thing Jim Butcher does really well is straddle that line between entertaining detective story and entertaining fantasy without going too deep into either direction. This makes Stormfront a very accessible read to either fans of detectives or fans of fantasy. If you're more into detectives, you could enjoy this book without worrying about, hard magic systems or elaborate explanations of magical worlds and creatures or things of that nature. But if you do lean fantasy and you don't care for detective stories as much, then there's enough magical intrigue in here to sustain you for the whole book. That being said, the accessibility here can be a turnoff for diehard fans of either genre. So if you need hard magic systems in your fantasy and rich, excessively described worlds, then you probably won't be satisfied by Stormfront. It's all pretty surface level here. The magic comes and goes as is needed by the character in the moment. Alternately, if you're a huge detective fan, the mystery here will probably feel pretty familiar as it's pretty straightforward. It's a kind of standard detective story. There's no huge twists or turns, and the revelations aren't going to send chills down your spine. This is just pretty standard detective fare. Honestly, Stormfront feels a bit like a pilot episode to a TV show. It doesn't have the big budget yet, but as long as it can quickly establish its tone, its world, and the characters, then it's done its job. The story for the first episode is basic so as not to overshadow those other elements. Jim Butcher also does a good job here at raising the stakes so that there isn't really a chance for a lull in the action. There are at least 3 different ticking clocks in Stormfront. 2 scenarios in which Harry ends up dead and one where he ends up in prison, and they're all happening to come together at the same time. It's really a classic formula of just piling on the adversity for your protagonist so that when they come out the other side, it feels extra rewarding and satisfying. I do want to address the surface level similarities here between the concept of the Dresden Files to the TV show Angel. Angel was a spin-off of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it premiered in 1999, which was a year before Stormfront was published. I'm sure Jim Butcher was probably writing it well before then. It just so happened that the two things kind of came out around the same time period. The TV show Angel featured the vampire character Angel moving to Los Angeles and opening a private investigator business dealing in supernatural crimes. Dresden, as we've discussed, is a Chicago private eye, and while he is technically mortal, he is a wizard, and therefore has a supernatural upper hand in his corner. Both characters also have a female cop character that brings them in on special cases that the police can't figure out, that are kind of atypical in nature, and with whom they share like a tepid sexual tension. However, that is where the similarities end, and I can say that these two works are distinct enough from each other to both be occupying the same genre without copying each other. For one thing, Harry Dresden is nowhere near as boring a character as Angel. Team Spike forever, baby. Some smaller items to note here. There is a touch of sexism in Harry's inner monologue, when he is describing the female characters that he interacts with. I chalk that up to the pulp detective and noir influences in the book. Stories in which the detective is always talking about dames whose legs go on forever. And I wonder if that is kind of lightened and just lessened in the subsequent books as the series progresses. The series is up to, I think, like 17 books now, with the most recent release being, I think, this past year. So I bet and I hope that that kind of mentality has been phased out a little bit. Still, even in this, it's not a deal breaker. You could probably read the whole book and not even notice that. It's just something that I kind of noticed, and I was like, yeah, they're doing the thing. All right. It is nowhere near as sexist as a lot of fantasy or detective stories can be. I also felt that the use of magic was well executed here. I found Harry figuring out how to use his magic to get out of jams to be infinitely more exciting than his detective work. And the climax of the book, which, without getting too spoilery, it involves two magic users, out magicking each other. That was a lot of fun. However, that ending isn't perfect. It is still a little bit disappointing from the detective aspect, because it wraps up with the big baddie being a character that we haven't spent a lot of time with or really met at all. So for a book where there are so many stakes, like I mentioned earlier, the climax here feels a little bit weightless for that reason. So, a little disappointing at the end. Overall, Stormfront is the popcorn of books. It's easily ingestible and it won't give you a stomachache, but it's not my first choice for a meal. The fantasy elements inside of a grounded urban setting allows for some fun interplay between worlds. There's also a lot that's set up here that can be explored in future books, which is interesting. The idea of the magical realm called the Never Never. I feel like that's definitely explored in other future novels, and additional creatures that can be met and interacted with. So there's a lot of promise here. I will probably continue the series, but I don't feel an urgency to do so. I thought it was good. I don't know that it was great. I liked it well enough. If I needed to assign a completely arbitrary and subjective grade to this book, I would give it a 7 out of 10. I'm not a literary critic. I don't claim to be. I just judge books based on what I'm looking for in a book. What you're looking for may be different, and you may have a different opinion of this book. I would love to hear that opinion. You can post a comment below. But I did like the book. So thank you very much for watching this. And I hope you have a good day. I still need to work on a better ending. I know. I have to. I was thinking about like a keep reading books situation, but I feel like that's a little too aggressive, like telling you what to do. So I'm going to keep working on it. But thanks for watching for now.